Hey guys, so before I get started, I do want to say that I did adjust the input on the microphone so it will be louder. I got it just barely on the edge where you can't hear the fans behind me on this computer behind me. So that should help. And I don't have the heater on anymore, so you don't have to hear that. So yeah, it's all these fans back here behind me that I gotta make sure it is not in the recording. So, this has been a question that people have been asking me recently. Of course, what about the situation of Iran? I've said before last year that I'm not interested in Israel or Iran. They're just not interesting. Um, and there's a big reason why I would never cover Iran in one of my videos. Um, so, but I'll tell you this. I'll tell you what you can do to find out the truth, right? And it will be the honest truth if you do this. It's not going to be like a philosophical truth or it's a debate or anything like that. That's politics. And that's exactly what's causing the problems today. So, alright, so if you're watching this, you most likely are maybe my age, maybe a little older, or you're very young. You might be in your 20s or even younger than that. So, I was born in 1992, right? These problems with Iran started around in the late 70s. I have no business knowing about this. Like, you can talk about a history lesson and all that. But the gas, the oil crisis, the energy crisis, you know, and conservatives are using that as justification that Iran has always been a problem with the United States. Um, and then you go out in the 2000s and you hear about these things about torture and all this other stuff going on. And then you hear now today, you hear Democrats say, well, they're not the enemy and all this. So who do you listen to? Who do you trust and all this other stuff? Well, it's difficult. And that's how they get you, is because United States politics has its lens on this. Without understanding what other parts of the world are seeing. So you can say it's a game against the United States. And it is. Same with Israel. But Iran, unlike Israel, Iran can be used against conservatives. And it can also be used against the Democrats. So Israel has support for the conservatives, and it's not liked by Democrats. Yet Democrats use Palestine, but in Iran, you don't have that division. It's Iran. It's not Palestine. It's not Israel. It's Iran. So they have that leverage against the United States, right? So, and you've been seeing videos on TikTok about people being happy that the regime is gone and all this. But you have to be very careful because you don't know what side is true or not. You don't know if that's a staged video. You don't know if it could even be AI for all we know. You don't know what's going on in another country where you've never experienced, and you have to rely on information from people you don't even know, and some are based on information from way back when before you were born. So what do you do? Um, if you go, it's like an infinite rabbit hole. And here's the danger of it. Even if you went to like Hezbollah and all these other things, you look into them, what will end up happening is you might see what's actually going on. But how do you know that you're not watching propaganda where if you say these things out in public, they'll be like, oh, you're just a propagandist. Well, you know so much where everyone will be like, oh, well, you're just propaganda. Someone else said that. You didn't come up with that yourself. Even your research has brainwashed you into believing that. And that's why I don't get involved with Iran. Because there's that danger there. And I try to get from all sides. We could go down such a deep rabbit hole where it's like I be doing the same thing to you if you were watching a video like that. Now, I could talk about it in such a way where that won't happen because people would be like, "How do you know it like that? How do you understand it in that way?" Um, it's just it'll be so technical and so detailed in the information, and we collect things and we see the whole picture. And I'm sure that there are things where the Democrats and the Conservatives both would be wrong. And it's in that wrongness that would actually be used against us. But to the rest of the world, they'd be like, oh yeah, of course. So it's a divide. It shows how divided we are, not just internally, but externally to all these different countries. So that's the truth that I could give you. That's the truth that you will understand, that there's something in there that even if we did look into it, we'll still be choosing a side no matter what. So, and I don't like doing my videos like that. I know I could, like I said before, I could do videos where that doesn't happen, but it's just not something I'm interested in. It's still from the lens of the United States if I were to talk about it, and I don't like getting pulled into those things where I feel like I gotta do an analysis of something, or I just don't like that, like the invisible puppetry on this channel. So yeah, so don't expect a formal analysis of Iran and all that. Um, One thing that people are talking about are the gas prices. There's conservatives asking, why are the gas prices so high when we have Venezuela? Well, if you remember one of my previous videos, I talked about how Chevron owns the rights to Venezuelan oil. And along the Gulf Coast, you have companies like Valero, Texaco, Exxon. Well, Exxon is in Beaumont, but in Port Arthur you have Texaco, Valero, um, Total, spelled as Total, Um, those are the ones off the top of my head I can remember. Um, and Valero doesn't. Um, there's also another thing about the whole oil refinery business is that I don't know if it's a big thing, but I do know it happens that in that there will be people who do not buy from Exxon because that's Iranian oil. There are people who just buy from Chevron or Valero, um, different ones, to know where your gas is coming from. And and of course, if there's companies that use Iranian oil, for example Exxon, and they raise their prices, then the oil, the whole the whole industry on gasoline and diesel and all this is that you're kind of restricted on how much you can charge because, or else, it's a federal thing. You gotta charge about the same prices. So if Iranian oil, uh, gasoline from Iranian oil rises, so does the Gulf Coast prices. Venezuela, Alaskan oil, all those gas prices have to go up. Yeah, there's a certain percentage that they have to charge if they do that. So yeah, they can completely milk it. Um, so you're seeing a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it's just so it's ridiculous in one way. But we do this to ourselves. We don't have enough. We use so much information on the past, and we use that for the present and the future. And it's just we trick ourselves when we do that, and we don't realize we're tricking ourselves. So it's a big thing, and that's what they're making money on. It's just something they can. It's just the way that we think as Americans. Um. Oh, what else? I think that's all, but just remember that. I get an example of this in my own life. Um, when I was planning on going to Ukraine. Well, I remember when at the time I'm going to go to Ukraine, I didn't know how much the prices, like the price difference was, which at the time was 35 hryvnia for $1. $1, one US dollar was 35 hryvnias, which is their dollars. And um, I remember doing the Chernobyl tour when I was booking it and everything. I was thinking, well, hang on a second. How do I know that I'm not being used and I'm thinking that this is better because there's some sort of scheme with the tours where if a foreigner came in and they were paying all that money, like $500, it was a minimum of, I think it was $500 for like, maybe it could have been $250, but I remember I paid $500 for my 3 days. So someone else might have been paid $250 per person per tour. So, and I was thinking, how do I know that this isn't something where the majority of the people who went to Kiev for that independence, for that revolution of dignity that happened in 2014, how do I know that this isn't a true Ukraine and these people are trying to fight that kind of thing? Like, it's about them versus the state. I didn't understand geopolitics like that. I didn't understand. But I was like, how do I know I'm not going to be used for their thing where it's against the population? And is there a disconnect there? And all that stuff. Like if I get into one of the Mercedes, which they use for the tour vans. Sometimes they use Mercedes. Sometimes they use another brand. We used the other brand when I was on the tour. But let's say you were on a Mercedes and you drive on the Shinobu tour and you're allowed by the government to go through these areas in this branded van in a Mercedes, where you know that a majority of the people in Ukraine cannot even afford, one, the tour, and two, they can't afford a Mercedes. So are you being used as an advertise or paying for the advertisement of that? And I was like, I do not like that. And so and it's not something that the people would necessarily think about is going on who live there, even in Kiev. I was like, what's really going on? So I was like, I had to look into it. I was like, well, and I was came up to this conclusion. Well, there's me, and I know that that could be the case. But there's other people who would pay $500 or $250 on a one-day tour, and they're using it way where they don't have no awareness of what's going on. And I thought, well, at least I'm aware of what's that being a possibility, whereas someone else just goes on a tour and doesn't think about anything outside of that. So that's how I was thinking about it when I went to Ukraine. Like, was I paying the government to do this? And I did not like to be called. I do not like being called clueless and stuff like that. And you learn from that. You have to be aware of your surroundings. Know the difference between the state and the majority, and what can be used against you, and whose side are you on, and your money talks louder, because they're never gonna probably see that money, because all that is controlled by the state and the military and all of that. Average person, they probably don't even know what's going on. So, So in terms of Iran, I think it's the same thing, but you don't know who to believe. Like, it's so, like, we're not from there. Ukraine could be more geared to look like it's westernized when it's actually not. You gotta be aware of that kind of stuff. But with the Middle East, you don't know that. A lot of people come in there knowing Israel. If Israel didn't really exist as its own country right now, Iran might not even be a thing right now. People wouldn't even care about Iran. So it's what are you being used for? What is, and of course it doesn't matter Democrat or Republican what they think, because Iran is going to do its own thing, and I believe that Iran is doing something that neither of them could ever see, and that's the truth. So it's not about what they've done or what they do or what they've been claimed to do, even if that maybe. But from our perspective, we don't know that for a fact. We don't know what's going on. We gotta. We just know that something is being used against both sides. Right? That's the only guarantee that we have, because if you could use as leverage for both sides, then where's the independence of. So yeah, I would say there's definitely something going on, that both sides are being manipulated. But to what means and to what ends is the outcome leading us to? And for that question, I don't want to say too much, but I know at the end of all this, that at the end of this, Iran and many other countries will be used to set free the future of the world. Because the Democrats and the Republicans, conservatives, liberals, whoever you are, whoever they are, sees they're going to take control. But when they have those people acting as a middleman, preventing them from taking over, where you end up with a neutral state and a centralized hub of neutrality, you will set 4+ billion people free at the expense of all those people in the politics. And well, I won't say that, because I don't want to get too much into this. But it's a divide between who wants to be neutral and who wants to be political. And it's the neutral people who bring the free world, because it's not based on ideology anymore. These people are the problem. And they're the ones being manipulated. They're the ones who's keeping all these gas prices, all this stuff going, even the economy going. But you see, that's not what they want. And Iran doesn't want that. Iran wants these people out. They want neutral. There's a lot of people who do. There's government agencies that do. There's government agencies in the United States that even want that, because they understand the problem. And it's a problem politics cannot solve. Just because of who you vote for in Congress or Senate, how the division of Republicans and Democrats and making decisions, or what president you got, doesn't change the fact that this is beyond what they can do anything with. But the outside world, they do. So eventually that divide is going to get so big where these people don't even see it. No, you probably see, if you're watching my channel, you probably see that. Or you might be watching my channel and think, well, I've seen something, I don't know what it is, I've never seen it before, but there's something there, I just can't name it. So you might be watching this channel with that. So, like I said, I cannot tell you as at this point to why is a manipulation going on with them at this time. What outcome does that have? I don't know. That I don't know. Now I know what happens in the future when it's neutral. When Iran is no longer, but as of right now, I don't know. I couldn't answer that. People say, well, it could be gas prices, but I think that's a very, very, very limited way of seeing it. But I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. So, um, guys, that's just all I wanted to say, and I'll see you guys in the next video. The next video, let me look. I know, I mean, there were some good ones. Um, Actually, I had a video that I had planned on here. I see it on the list. So, it relates to this, actually. I wasn't expecting to do this. To do it in this, talk about this in this video. So I have it listed here. Israel and how propaganda works in the West. Um, it's all a manipulation of politics. Israel is a manipulation of religion and non-religion. But with Iran, Iran knows that. Iran knows how Israel works with the United States. But Iran, it's not religion. It's not even ideology. It's just how can we use something against them and leverage ourselves where the Democrats will be for us and the Republicans be against. Now, if you were having that kind of thinking, then there would have to be a United States-based agency behind that because they know how to manipulate the United States. But it's not. Iran themselves wouldn't care because then any country could do it. China could do it. Russia could do it. But they don't do it like that. Afghanistan could do it. But they don't do it like that. Iran is. So, you know, when we talked about that, let's put that as well. I have another one in here, and it does tie to what I said about the neutrality. I don't know when I'm gonna be able to do that one, cause that's I might do it soon. I might talk about that soon, and then you guys can connect the dots of how that connects here, to Iran. Let me think. I don't know if I'll talk about the federal government and the United States government. I've talked about. I mean, I think at this point, with the videos, I've noticed that the videos that I do, it actually shows the difference between the U.S. government for democracy and the federal government that you don't vote for. I think I've made that clear in how that works with my videos, so I don't necessarily need to do a video straight on that because you actually see the process and the 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 whole system there without me having to explain it right. So you see it through the scenarios and circumstances where I don't have to actually explain how that works. I think you get a pretty good idea of that. So I'll remove that from the Celeste. Um, yeah, I think that I don't know. I want to save that that last one for neutrality later on. I want to do these other ones first. for future reference. Oh no, they already did it. So we're getting a Chartreuse 5.3. I haven't used it. I see it on the list here. 5.3. I know that they're getting rid of 5.2 on March 11th. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how that's gonna go. But so yeah, guys, I'll end it here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. Hey guys, sorry. I meant to do this yesterday, but I forgot, and so I gotta edit this to the end of the video. So to give you a rundown, I live in Arizona, and we have this company, this gas station known as Maverick. It's pretty much a monopoly in Arizona, probably elsewhere, but I've seen them only in Arizona so far. But where they get their oil deposits are from West Texas. That'd be West Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. I believe those are the three. And they're charging almost $5 a gallon when they're not even using Iranian oil, Gulf Coast oil, Venezuelan oil, not even Canadian oil. They're using United States-based oil, but they're charging the same price as everyone else charges. I meant that as scroungy. There are gas stations here and there, like Circle K, which I don't know nothing about Circle K, but I imagine, but it is a national brand. Maverick isn't national, but they're charging national prices. So I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are upset about that, especially if it's just United States. But then I also have to think, well, the suppliers, the trucks, support shipping the gasoline. They're using gasoline from these other companies. So you could say, well, they're adding it on to the price of the transport, which shows you, one, Maverick's logistics sucks, and it's not in a closed circle. They could be, but then why would you charge the prices? The other one is, and it's much more plausible, and it's would bypass everything, would be the perception of the United States citizens, where if you see $5 a gallon in Houston or Dallas, Missouri, Ohio, Seattle, anywhere in the United States, and they're all saying $5 a gallon, well, you wouldn't be charging the original $3 a gallon, because public perception is saying it's gasoline, and most people who buy gas doesn't know where the oil comes from or the gas comes from. You know, most people, but there are a few people, me for example, right now, who doesn't drive a car, but that's beside the point, that West Texas oil is not related to any of the other ones, because it's comes from the ground, you know. Although I don't know what oil that would be. It could be grouped in there with the other kinds. So that would, like if it was Brent crude, for example, I don't know what it is, but if it's Brent crude, then you would charge it the same way as Brent crude, and the gas prices would reflect that same price as oil. But you could still argue that they could make money on the oil and the gasoline could still be at the lower price. But it's because national perception that they could charge more because everyone else is and no one knows where their oil comes from. Now, unless you have some diehard Maverick fans and know where it comes from, but like I said, a majority of people probably don't even know that. So, you know, I'm just throwing that out there. So, yeah, guys, this is the end, the official end. If I gotta make another one, I'll just make a part 2 for the same day. So we have 2 videos in one day, but it's a big topic, complex topic, but, you know, we're just trying to make sense of it. We're looking at the information, we're pulling things out, seeing what's different, making comparisons, and this is what we're presented with. So, guys, I'll end it here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.